Hey everybody, welcome back to Diesel Creek. My name's Matt. This beauty right here is my 1971 F250 heavy duty special that I picked up a couple weeks ago. If you haven't seen the previous video on this truck, it's worth a watch. The link is down in the description. Go ahead and check that out. If you haven't seen it, you're going to want to see it. I found this truck actually only a few miles from the farm here. So in the last video, me and my buddy Sam went down and were able to get it running and ended up driving it back here to the shop. And it's been sitting in here for about a week now. I want to start working on this thing. I know I have a habit of buying lots of projects and not getting them done, and there was a lot of comments in the first video on this truck that, oh, it's just another thing that's going to sit out in the weeds and rust away. No, ye of little faith. There's a lot of things I buy that I don't have the intention of restoring. I mainly buy a lot of stuff just to save it from being scrapped or rotting away in the woods for the rest of its days. At least if it comes here, it has a pretty good shot at getting fixed to the point where it can operate again and I can sell it off. I've sold off a lot of stuff and continue to sell a lot of stuff. Items that I really take a shine into, though, often get pushed to the front of that line and pulled into the shop and get their day in the sunlight a little bit ahead of some of the other ones. This truck, for instance, is going to be instrumental in working on other things. Since it's a service truck, I'm going to load it full of tools and we're going to be able to take this thing out on revivals and everything else, and it's going to make itself quite handy, I'm sure. What do you think, Roscoe? I need to get that heated floor turned on, don't I? You'd probably be loving that, huh? Anyways, as discussed in the previous video, this truck is very clean for our climate. Western Pennsylvania is not known for rust-free vehicles, that's for sure. We have plenty of salt on the roads this time of year, and rust and rot is rampant. What I was able to show you in the last video in that poorly lit garage was probably not doing it any favors. But as you can see right now, the fenders and everything are actually super solid. No rust or rot at all on them. I see the teeniest little bit of surface rust down here by those mud flaps. The bottoms of the doors look like they've been fluid filmed or something. That's not like rust, that's like some sort of grease. It reminds me of fluid film. So that's actually great. They were trying to save on this old girl even back before they parked it. This cab corner on the driver's side here is shot, however. Things are not good there. So that cab corner is going to need done. I'm sure the door could use a little bit of attention as well. And probably, I forget what you call this piece here, but it seems pretty solid, but we're definitely going to get that taken care of, blasted and painted and fixed up so that it doesn't rot away on us some more. So that's this side. Let's check out the passenger side. Starting up here at the marker light, the fender's got a little bit of rust going, but not bad. It's all surface rust up here. One little ding, so we'll try to get that, maybe knock that out and get that polished up a bit. The rest of the fender looks pretty solid. No rust really. The bottom of this door though, that's another story. We've got a hole there, so that's going to need patched up and fixed up. This door in general is in pretty sad shape. We got another real soft spot here. That's not going to be really fixable, so everything's pretty crunchy through and through. That's going to take a lot of fabbing to make that door right. I don't know if I can get a lower door skin. If I can, I'm going to just order one of those up. That'd be a lot easier than trying to fix what's there. The underside of the door doesn't look too bad. It looks like we'll be able to save that. The rocker on this side is fairly solid, but we do have a little soft spot right here. Is this? I can't tell what this is. This could be putty or an old patch job or something there. I'm not sure. Over here, I don't know what's going on with the duct tape. Yeah, I was afraid of that. That's hiding some pretty serious rot in the post there. So that's going to take some cutting and chopping and fabbing. I know it's hard to believe for some of you guys that this is what I'm calling good condition, but it really is. If you're from Pennsylvania, you'll recognize this truck as a survivor. Moving back here to this cab corner on the passenger side, it's completely gone as well. They stuffed rags or something up here just to try to keep rodents out, I imagine. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, that's nasty. But yeah, cab corner's gone. And it extends almost all the way over to the frame between the bed and the cab there. The good news is this truck actually came with one cab corner. it was laying in the cab here. So maybe they pulled it in the shop with the intention of patching this up and just never got around to it. But looks like a driver's side, so we'll have to dial up a passenger side here for this side. So I'm actually the second owner of this truck. I was able to purchase it from the original owner's son as they were cleaning up his dad's estate. He told me that years and years ago they did redo the bottom half of this truck once already. He said from the chrome strip up is original paint, but this bottom below the chrome strip has been redone, he claims. As for the service bed back here, it is in pretty darn good shape. The condition of the service bed and just how tidy everything was in the truck, you know, listen to how good the door's shut. That's what actually sold me on this truck. So inside the compartments here in the service bed, you can see there is no rust at all. I mean, it's like brand new inside of here. So that's really good to see. I've seen service beds that are only a couple years old like this that are rotted clean through. Never noticed this tag before. It's a Markle Morrison. I'd never heard of this brand, but a few people in the comments of the last video said that it's a well-known brand. I don't know it, but that doesn't mean it's not well known. We have a teeny little bit of blistering rust showing up on the doors here. Nothing that you couldn't just hit with a wire wheel and clean up and paint again. I think this is the worst spot that I've noticed in this truck is this compartment may be leaking or something. You can see I haven't moved it or anything because this can's like glued to the floor. Yeah, so a little bit of rust down here, really nothing to worry about, far from rotted through or anything. But this little spot right here on the side of the box is got some flakiness to it, so we're going to try to get that fixed up before it becomes any worse. Cleaned out the bed of the truck already, and it is nice and solid too, so that's good to see. Would be good to have some D-rings welded in here, and we're going to use those very quickly. Driver's side of the bed is about the same condition as the passenger side. Very salvageable, very solid. Not worried about that at all. Some of you guys noticed in the first video that the rear rims are different from the front rims, and something I didn't know about trucks of this era is these heavy duty trucks actually came with locking ring rims like big trucks. So this is not a split rim. This is not the super dangerous kind that people like to rant and rave about and tell me that I'm going to die every time I mess with them. This is just called a locking ring rim. It's a two-piece rim. There's also three-piece locking ring rims, which are also not that terrible to deal with. There's so much misinformation around them, though, that people think they are deadly, and I'm sure that they're not as safe as a one-piece rim, but if you do it right, these are not dangerous at all. But anyways, I actually have over at that guy's place still, I have to go get them yet, the original rims for the rear that would match these front rims. And we have these hubcaps. So these are the hubcaps that belong to the original rear rims. They're in pretty good shape, and from what I understand, fairly difficult to come by these days. I think this truck would look good with the original rims on it and the hubcaps. So I am not much of a body man myself. I don't really have the patience for it, but I got a neighbor at home that does pretty good body work for pretty cheap. So I'm gonna get him on this thing ASAP, and he'll get it all fixed up for us so we can be cruising around fixing up stuff in style in the summertime here. I'm not going to drive this truck in the winter because, as I said before, Pennsylvania will have this thing looking like that in 2 seconds flat. But to get the body work done, we're going to have to remove the bed because you can't get in there to work on the back side of the cab at all with this bed in here, obviously. So I guess the overall plan today is I'm going to go through the bed, completely clean out all the junk. I'm going to throw the junk away, keep all the good stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to remove the bed before the end of the day here. I'm going to give you guys a quick overall view of the toolboxes here before I completely clean them out. Unfortunately, I did not get to see this truck before they went through and pulled out all the tools. I would have loved to have seen the way it was set up. As I've said 100 times now, this truck truly is a time capsule. It was so cool to see this thing sitting in that garage like they had just parked it yesterday. Bunch of bolt bins over here. This thing was just loaded with really cool old bottles of stuff like this bottle of AMSOIL. I'm gonna guess this is only from the 80s. It's not super old, but it doesn't have a barcode on it, so that tells you it's, what, pre-83, I think, or pre-89, something like that. And the barcodes came around heavy in the 80s. There's a cool one. Silu Diesel Fuel Anti-Gel. Never heard of that. Warminster, PA. Huh. Anybody ever heard of this stuff? Still good. Should I put it in something? Let me know in the comments. So I think I'm gonna throw on some tunes and start digging through these toolboxes and going through everything, like I said, sorting out the good from the bad. And I'll bring you back after it's all said and done, show you if I found any cool stuff hidden up in these toolboxes. Okay, we got the box all cleaned out. Look at that. She's empty probably for the first time in quite a long time. I'm just gonna hit some of the highlights here. I showed this in the previous video on this truck. This is a really cool calendar for 1985. It was from a dresser equipment dealer, so it's got some cool pictures of some old dresser machines on it. My buddy Sam, real big into the dressers, so a bunch of people told me that this calendar actually lines up with next year's calendar, so probably give that to buddy Sam. He's a big dresser guy. I'll let him have that. Found one service wrench in here. Can't make out the make on it, but it's a, what, 7/8 little service wrench. A USA made micro switch. These things are often used to like retrofit backup beepers on the machines that didn't originally come with them, stuff like that. A bunch of O-rings, little furls and stuff in those bags, random nuts and bolts, a series parallel switch. So if you don't know, like these are on old trucks, like my 57 auto car has a series parallel switch on it. Batteries in the battery compartment are only wired in one way, obviously, and that's probably actually 12 volts. This thing takes them, switches it to 24 volts for the starter, and I could be reversing this, but it switches it to 24 volts for the starter. Once you have the engine started, this thing goes back into the regular series and runs 12 volts for all the in-cab stuff. So that's what that guy does. But those are pretty much eliminated on modern vehicles, modern trucks, I should say. Like the 1980 auto car here, it's just a straight 12 volt system on that truck. There is no 24 volts for the starter like on the 57. Got some good Loctite here still. Nice Proto, I think it is. Yeah, Proto. 1 inch to 3/4 inch impact adapter. That's nice. This thing here is really cool, and I need you guys' help to tell me what this thing is. So it's some sort of a meter in a leather pouch here. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to make that out. It says American Ceramic and Chemical Corporation on it, and then it says explosives right there on this brass tag. And then it just has an address on there, Rockefeller, New York. I'm going to try to slide the meter out of here so you guys can see it better. So here's this meter. Chloride silver cell. Remove cover below to replace battery. Warning, replace only with a chloride silver cell. Never heard of that. It's got two kind of like test probes up on the top here. Like you'd like push it up, like you could like stick this thing up against something and it would read out, but I'm not sure what it's measuring there. The meter here doesn't really indicate what kind of measurement it's giving you. It just has some numbers on it. So if you guys know what this thing is, let me know. It's pretty cool looking. Definitely old. What else we got here? Just some random nuts and bolts, some emery cloth. This can is cool. So this says Climax Molybdenum Company on it. And there's a mill not far from where I grew up that actually makes this stuff, the molybdenum that goes into steel and stuff. That's what's in this can. And that's where this came from. So that's pretty neat. This little receipt here I thought was pretty cool. So my buddy Sam at Scrappy Industries bought a D8 and a 977 off of the guy that I bought this truck from. With his D8 purchase, he got some extra parts, and among the parts were some brand new armrests for the D8. And I believe that this is the receipt for those armrests. It's dated November of 1990, so that's pretty cool. $50 for 2 armrests. You're not gonna get that deal today. This whole big box of these retainer bolts, I don't know what the heck these things are, maybe you guys know, but they have this bolt and then you have this wedge that kind of goes through them and locks something together. Not sure what those are about. Got a whole bunch of thermo aid here, Loctite that's still in the package, that's still good, electrical tape. This was pretty cool. Liquid gasket material, and you can tell it's old because that Caterpillar logo there, I think they dropped that in the mid-70s sometime. That's my favorite Caterpillar logo. Some hydraulic fittings. Do you know what these things are? Obviously some sort of tongs, but I didn't know if they have a special purpose. Look at that bill the way it is on there. If you know what those are intended for, let me know in the comments. Whole lot more nuts and bolts over here. Got a nice old school Eagle oil can. Got some eye bolts. Really old riveted master lock. Brand new starter switch for an International here in the box, so that's kind of cool. Lots more nuts and bolts, some fuel lines, some big O-rings. This is a magneto shutoff switch for a Caterpillar. That's pretty cool. Grease gun, some belt dressing and anti-rust film. And you guys already saw the AMSOIL there. This anti-rust film is probably the stuff that's sprayed on the box here and on the hinges and everything to keep this box from rusting away. So I'm glad that they took precautions back in the day and tried to save on this old girl. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion right now. Well, like Ben Franklin said, a place for everything and everything in its place. Most of this stuff does not have a place back in this truck when the time comes to put this thing on the road. So I'm gonna try to get this stuff put away and then we're gonna yank this bed off of here. Truck is officially emptied out, cleaned out, and I crawled underneath there and zapped the 4 bolts out that are holding the bed to the frame. All we should have to do now, fire up the old forklift here and should be able to just lift that bed right off of there. All right, let's give her a cold start here. Still learning what this old girl likes as far as cold starts. Here we go, contact. Couple pumps. There we go. Boy, this old girl just purrs like a kitten, don't she, Roscoe? Come on, Roscoe, get in here. 14 degrees outside. I'm trying to keep that door closed as much as possible. Well, hopefully this works. Well, there we go. You guys can see clearly now the frame and everything in this truck, while it's got some surface rust on it, is actually really solid. The frame on my blue F350 truck, which is a 2003, looks about the same as this. So for her age, she's still pretty solid, so I'm real happy with that. But you can clearly see the back of the cab here now. Pretty rough for those cab corners. So we'll get a couple new ones dialed up. And this thing is about ready to head to the body shop now. While I have the bed off too, we're gonna flip it over, steam clean it up real good, make sure there's no major rust going on anywhere that I don't see. And we're gonna give her a good fluid film treatment before she goes back on. You can see this stuff flaking off right here. It's like a teeny little bit of surface rust flaking off with the fluid film that they have already on it. But they did a good job of keeping this thing pretty well undercoated by the looks of things. I got it back from the body shop several months ago, as you guys saw there, and like so many of my projects, I thought I was going to hop on it right away and hurry up and crank it out and get it done and drive it all summer. That didn't happen. It was spring when I pulled it in here, I think, and now we're in the fall. The leaves are coming off the trees as we speak, and it's just been sitting here collecting dust. So let's get this thing put back together so I can get it mobile and out of here and actually enjoy this thing. Dusty. I couldn't tell you the last time I had this truck running. It's more recent than when I brought it into the shop, but it's still definitely been a while. I just threw a used battery I had around the shop in it. So I guess we're gonna see how good that battery was. Can I get a contact? Oh yeah! I'm now reminded that I also want to put a muffler on this truck. The original one is rotted off big time. I do wish this truck had power steering. It would make it a lot nicer to drive, but I'll take it. Can't beat a 306. This thing just loyal as the day is long. Apparently our battery's pretty good too. I looked around for this dinged up chrome piece a bit and a new grill insert, and nobody's making them aftermarket that I could find. So maybe if I find a nice used one somewhere, I'll pick it up, but I kind of almost like it. It's kind of grown on me. Just gives the truck some character. Shows that it's been previously enjoyed. Might just glue this plastic piece back up or something and kind of keep it looking like it's in its work clothes still. That's one of the things I really do like about this truck, and a lot of equipment and things. That what really gets me excited is not a good high quality resto. I mean, there's a place for that, but just a truck that's all original, or a piece of equipment that's all original paint, still in good shape, man, that gets me going. That is what I'm all about. So the fact that, at least from the chrome strip up, the red is original, I like that. When it was over at Doug's shop, he resprayed from the chrome strip down, so all that lower white has been redone. There was a good bit of rot in the doors, the posts and everything. It was a little bit rougher than we thought upon first inspection, but looks good now. That's all that matters. So back here is another reason why I hate leaving a project sit around in my shop, because any flat surface that can gather material or breed clutter seems to do it at a rapid rate here. So I gotta find a place for all this stuff that's not on the back of this truck. I had to get that muffler ordered, but we can start thinking about our airlift kit now. Hui! Okay, so what we got here is an airlift kit. Now what this is going to do is get mounted on the truck, and we're going to have airbags that help our suspension take some of that load away from the springs. It's going to be adjustable from in the cab. It has, as you can see, there's like a little air tank and stuff in the picture there. So we're going to have a little bit of onboard air. That's what this guy is here. So we could, you know, inflate a tire or something if we wanted to. It might even be enough to where I don't have to carry around an actual gas compressor in this truck. Not really its intended use, but I think it'll do it. All right, so I don't think this thing's gonna be too bad to install. Just gotta mount a few things, run a few hoses and some wires. Bob's your auntie. Oh yeah. It's also controlled wirelessly, so you can put this remote in the cab with you and you can turn up your air pressure up or down. Looks like we probably got some preset modes there. We'll have to figure all that out after we get it installed. That's gonna be nice. Here's our actual compressor. Look at that little beauty. Just runs off 12 volts. This one's our air tank. Look at that, made in the USA. Go airlift, that's awesome. Hard to find stuff like this made in the USA. One more box to go here. I don't know what's in here. Oh, this is our actual airbags, I think. Yeah. Air spring cradle. All right. There we go. That's the meat and potatoes of the unit right there. This is going to be the actual airbag that goes over the axle and helps out the springs. There we go. There's the actual airbag that's going to be doing the lifting here. So this is going to be the lower mount for our air spring. All this stuff needs to be able to kind of float around and make it sit right. So we just leave everything loose right now. You don't need to tighten your hardware yet. All right, so set your stack on your spring, try to play around with it, get everything kind of squared up and worked out how it should. Then we can clamp this bottom plate on here and mark holes to drill the top one. In our application here, we got a helper spring, so you just bolt this bottom bracket to the helper spring, not the whole leaf pack. All right, so obviously our bottom mount just kind of clamps right onto the helper spring there, and it's ready to go. I got that all tightened down where I want it. The top plate here, once we have it situated just right on the frame, we're gonna actually have to drill the frame for this upper bracket. According to the directions, you don't need to worry about the upper bolt holes if they're too close to the top, you know, the roll in the frame, basically. Don't worry about those. It's acceptable to just use the bottom two. So that's what we're gonna do. And obviously not manufacturer's recommendations or anything, but I don't see why you couldn't drill a hole, you know, right between those two holes and have another bolt hole if that's what you're looking for. But we're gonna do what the directions tell us to do for now. It's amazing that I'm even reading them. But I'm just taking a transfer punch here, and all that's doing is giving me a perfect center on the bolt hole, and then give us a place to drill. We can pop the bracket back off and drill our holes. That old frame's a bit thicker than I thought it was. Methinks this bit is a bit dull. All right, so what I've done rather than just jumping up to the 3/8 bit is stair-stepped it. So I started with like an 1/8 inch, and then I went to 1/4 inch. Now I'm up to 3/8. It just makes it for easier drilling. Okay, with our holes drilled, we can drop this plate back on here. Everything should just line right up. Oh yeah, this side looks good. This side looks good. I think we're golden. Now all we gotta do is bolt it up. Hardware is all installed. All that's left to do is tighten them up. Well, there you have it. Nice clean install. That's one side done. Just got to do the mirror image on the other side. Well, I think I finally found a spot where I'm happy with mounting our air controller. So I went ahead and marked the bolt holes. Just got to drill them. I used to always just spray penetrating oil on my drill bits, but I've been using this anchor lube. Full disclosure, they sent it to me, but the stuff works really good. I've actually been getting a lot more life out of my drill bits since I started using this stuff. All right, that thing's securely mounted. What do we have left? An air tank and the compressor. For some reason, this has turned into one of those jobs that I just couldn't bring myself to finish. I mounted the airbags in no time at all, and that went all smoothly. And then I had to move the truck around in the shop to accommodate some other projects that we were working on over the last couple months here. And this thing just kept getting shoved off and could not bring myself to actually mounting all this stuff. I don't know why. I was dreading it in my mind, but it was actually pretty easy. They couldn't really make it any simpler for you. They give you these nice little templates and everything you can lay out on the frame and drill or make brackets with or whatever. But I have the compressor hooked up directly into the air tank, as they illustrate very nicely in the directions. And then I have a little water separator coming out of the air tank down there. Drain valve on the bottom of the tank and the blow-off valve on the air tank as well. One thing I didn't do that I think they kind of tell you to do in the instructions, but you don't have to, of course, is I could have run another air fitting out of the back of the tank and run that onboard air up to the bed for, running a blow gun or something like that. I was originally going to do that because it does seem like it would be convenient not to have to fire up the, gas compressor or whatever just to run the blow gun. But I have to accept the limitations of this setup. That poor little compressor is ample for doing airbags and maybe blowing off the occasional little part. But I know I will try to abuse that poor little thing. And it's just realistically not designed to do what I'm going to want it to do. So therefore, don't give myself the option. Don't cause us any unjust problems. I'm going to carry around the gas-powered compressor in this truck anyways, so I just don't think it's going to be necessary. But anyways, now that this stuff's mounted, all I have to do is run our air lines. I believe we just have to run an air line coming out of the water separator there. So that's the main line. We're going to run that up into the air pressure controller here. And then there's two lines that come out left and right, going to each airbag from there. All those fittings are just push to connect, so as long as we have some nice square ends on our plastic DOT airline, should just click right in there. All right, there we go. Now we just need to run a hose from each airbag over to the air controller here. I tried to make these runs a little bit longer than they need to be. That way there's no hard bends or nothing's pulling on the line. It can kind of just hang where it wants to. That's all there is to it. Now we just need to hook up our electrical. All right, so we got, two wires coming out of this guy, whatever that does. Looks like it's some sort of air interlock maybe. This guy up here looks like a pressure sensor, and two wires there as well. And we got the main harness plugs into the air controller there. Push that little lock tab down, it all clicks together nice. Then we have three wires coming up off the harness here. So we got I was right. So two wires go to a solenoid valve, the other one goes to a pressure switch. I'm not sure. We're going to have to read the directions because we got 4 wires on the unit and only 3 to connect to it. So let's figure that out. Well, luckily, Airlift includes these really awesome, super simple, couldn't screw it up diagrams in the directions for simpletons like me when it comes to wiring. So for the one wire that connects to the pressure switch, we just have to connect to one leg of the pressure switch. The other half of the pressure switch just goes to ground. So we're going to put an eyelet on that, connect it to the bolt that we have run through the frame there. These other 2 wires that run to that solenoid valve need to connect to both sides of the solenoid valve. So pretty simple. It's just a few butt connectors and some heat shrink away. Heat, shrunk. They give you plenty of wire here, so I'm trimming these things kind of to better length so that we don't have a ton of excess all wound up or hanging out down here. But definitely rather have too much than not enough, so it works out pretty good. Throw some zip tie action on here, try to keep this bundle nice and organized. Alright, so we need to find a nice place to mount this relay. And then we have the run for the compressor. And then this piece, I think, can cross over as long as we have enough slack in the harness, and I think we do. I can cross it over on this cross member and run it down that frame rail all the way to the battery, which is located on the passenger side of this vehicle. It's really nice and easy to run all this stuff without this bed on here, so I want to make sure we do a good job, because I don't want to have to come back later and fix it because something rubbed through. And it would be much, much more difficult at that time because the bed will be on. I believe that concludes the wiring in the rear portion of the vehicle here. We just need to run the wire along the frame rail all the way up to the battery compartment. I've got all the wiring just about wrapped up here. Everything's laid on there nice. I know you don't typically see wires run over the top of the frame like that, but the way the bed sits on the frame, there's only 3 points of contact. There's one that goes across here, one that goes across right in the middle over the axles, and then one that goes across back there. So that wire is theoretically not going to be in the way for anything. I chose to do it that way rather than running on the inside of the frame and potentially be exposed to a lot of heat from the exhaust. So I brought it on the outside of the frame rail and I routed it up against this pre-existing power wire that the previous owners ran back there for the fuel pump in the bed. So we brought it right up alongside of that other power wire and tied it in. Obviously these battery leads and stuff are kind of junk, they're all falling apart and everything, but they still work for now. We're going to keep working on this thing over time. I'm not going to go through and change every little thing at this moment. So the directions tell you to run the wires up here and hook them directly onto the battery. I did do that with the ground because the previous owners had already done that with that other power wire. I typically tend to stay away from hooking stuff right on the terminals directly. I try to run it through a fuse box or any other place I can get a good solid connection to some substantial wire without having to be right on the terminals, because it just makes it a pain for switching the battery out, or if you have to jump start something, you know, these things can get busted off if you're being kind of hasty with the alligator clamps. But I mean, you can see these leads are in tip-top shape anyways, so that was another reason not to put more stuff in the way up here, because I'm sure I'll be changing these out before too long. Anyways, you had 3 wires coming up here into the engine bay. Had a black, a red, and a pink. Now the black is our ground. The red, of course, is the hot, and I chose to grab it over here on the solenoid rather than the battery terminal. And the pink wire, it's pink down here, but it's black up here now because I added a fuse holder into there in line. But anyways, I had to have a key on hot for that pink wire, so we're pulling it off of the solenoid as well. The way these old Fords are wired, this terminal right here on the solenoid is dead until you're cranking it or it's running, so that should work out just fine for us. All I have left to do now is put the fuses in the holders and the system should be live. Never having operated one of these systems before, I'm not sure if this thing's going to come on when I put the fuse in there or not. I don't think it will. I know it won't for this one, but when I put the big one in, I'm not sure if the pump's just going to take off and start trying to make pressure or what the deal is. There we go. Pump did something. Well, I think I got it working right. I got the remote connected here. So it's probably flickering on the camera, but it's not flickering here in real life. You can adjust each side up and down individually if you want to, or do both sides evenly. But it seems like it's working pretty good, because if you go to like program 3 there, you guys see it lift up? Now if we want to go back to program 1, it's only 5 psi. Drops it right back down. Pretty slick. Now, what I found out after reading the directions, something I'm usually hesitant to do, is you can actually get an app for your phone and do the same exact thing, and probably more even, with your phone. But honestly, I'd much rather have a remote like this. I hate trying to dial up stuff like that on my phone, but your mileage may vary. I like that it's an option, so if I lose the remote or the battery dies or have some other issue with it, I could still adjust my suspension as needed. So I guess that about wraps up the airbag installation, but there's still more to do here on this truck. I really want to get the bed put on it so I can load it full of tools. I've got a pile of tools over there that's hogging up space in that workbench I'd like to get put in the truck, not to mention get the truck out of my road. So I think I have a parking brake held up on that drum over there, so we're going to have to pull that drum off on the passenger side. I also need to put the shock absorbers on, because we knocked the old shock absorbers off when we painted it. And that muffler, I stabbed the new muffler on there, but I still got to run the clamps on it and figure out some sort of tailpipe situation for it, because right now it just, as you can see, deadheads out on the muffler. So we got to come up with a 90 and maybe like a down sweep or something to kick it out from underneath the truck. Pig mat here. This is an old school axle setup, so to get the drum off, we have to pull the axle just like the big truck over there, the auto car. So when I pull the axle, a lot of times the oil from the hub is going to drain out. Shouldn't be a whole lot, so pig mat should catch it. Cute little baby axles here. All right, the hub should just come off now. Should, but the brakes are stuck on. Pretty sure it's the emergency brake cable is seized holding the park brake on, so it's not going to want to come off without a fight. Hopefully I don't wreck the brakes trying to get this off. Well, I have a hub puller here, and I do have it connected to the hub. However, not exactly how it's intended to be used. The way it's intended to be used is down here on these studs, but the way this, I don't know what you call this piece, this section of the hub sticks up in such a way that this puller can't get on those studs. I can get like 1 or 2 of the feet on, and then the third one won't go. But you can't do them at 180 and just use 2. Like, basically, I just would need a different type of puller for this situation. If this doesn't work, I can rig up a T-bar on it. Just a lot more fiddling around trying to get a puller on it. But at this point, I don't see much other option. So this might work. Oh yeah. It's only hanging on by the top, it seems like. Oh, I don't love it. It's really hanging on up there. There we go, I think we got her. There we go. Good gravy that thing was on there. Looks like there's plenty of pad lining left in there. And if this thing wouldn't have been hanging up, we could have left well enough alone and just avoided this whole situation. I see we got a broken cable here on our adjuster. That could also be maybe part of the problem. It just maybe keeps adjusting itself to be too tight. So there's what we're looking at. You can see this cable over here. I'm not super familiar with drum brakes. I mean, I can do drum brakes. I've done several sets of drum brakes, but the actual component names escape me. I don't know what you'd call this cable, but I know it goes down here to this ratcheting paw mechanism, what adjusts the brakes for pad wear. What I suspect is our real issue, though, is this guy right here, the e-brake cable. The other end of the e-brake cable is up there. You know, it comes from the cab, and it goes into a splitter, basically. One runs down to the passenger side wheel, one runs to the driver's side. Well, we're on the passenger side, and I cannot manually pull that cable up there for this wheel. Well, I just got off the phone with Napa, and unfortunately, they're not going to have my brake cable until tomorrow. They were able to get me the rest of the parts I needed, though. Originally, I was going to grab a whole spring kit and redo all these springs, but really looking at them, they're not even rusted. They're in really good shape, and I would venture to say that these old springs are better than the new springs. It just seems like no matter how much money you got these days, stuff like that, you can't get good parts. They're just junk. So when I can, I like to stick with some of that old stuff. But I do have the new self-adjuster and the cable that's busted here coming for both sides. These brake shoes seem to have plenty of life left in them. They almost look like they were recently replaced before this thing was parked, probably. So I'm not going to worry about changing those. It's not like they're delaminating or anything. I have new wheel cylinders to put on here as well, but they're not leaking. And I really hate fixing stuff that ain't broke, but being that it's such a pain to get in here and do this job, I think I might go ahead and replace those. You know, I read a lot of comments on the channel, and sometimes I'll get people saying things like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's out here trying to make everybody think he's some professional mechanic, and he doesn't know diddly about squat. And sometimes you guys are right. I'm not a professional mechanic. I'm pretty much self-trained in most things. But what I hope I never do is come across as some know-it-all professional mechanic, because I am definitely not that, and it is not my intention to give you that impression. A lot of times, things I'm doing on the channel is the first time I've ever done it, and I try to be transparent when those times are, but drum brakes is something I'm not super familiar with. I've done a few sets, like I said. Definitely not a professional at this, so you're probably going to see me screwing up here in more than one place. It helps to have proper tools when you're doing this stuff, though, and I had a really generous subscriber send me some nice drum brake tools a while back. Those have not been used, I don't think, until now. I think this might be the first time, so putting them to use, finally. Trying to get the park brake cable disconnected right now. There we go. Park brake cable's out. These shoes have some different retainer springs than what I'm used to seeing. What I'm more used to seeing in a drum brake is almost looks like a valve spring and keeper assembly, and then you take a tool like this and push down over the top and twist it. I don't think that's going to work for us here. Well, that works. Should have disconnected the lower spring first. See, I'm messing up. You guys just need to yell at me. Look at that. Professional disassembly right there. I have to figure out how to get this mess apart so we can replace that cable that's broken. I would have expected like a cotter pin or something in there, but it doesn't appear that there is. Looks like to get this park brake cable through the backing plate, we just need to squeeze some tabs on it. It should pull through. Come on! Oh, there's a secondary tab. Ah. Just turn it. I think you just turn it. Yep. Yep. Haha! Cool. Another testament to this truck's proper care over the decades. I would have assumed that the bolt that holds on all this stuff would have just rounded off, or the nut rather. I really didn't think it was going to come off there without a fight. That's why I didn't record starting to break it loose there. I just put the socket on there to verify the right size. I gave her just the slightest little pull, and it just started turning. I didn't even put any penetrating oil on it. Well, hot diggity, yeah, you can see right there. At least I hope you can see. I hope it's focusing. That bolt still has like the zinc coating on it. That's pretty impressive. Didn't expect that. It's been my experience in life in this region that brake lines are almost always a write-off on an older vehicle. You can't ever get them loose, but that bolt has me hopeful that maybe I'll be able to get this broken loose without twisting the line off or rounding the, oh, yeah, look at that. Line's still stuck, but the nut's turning. Let's give that 100 little wiggles back and forth, and maybe the line will break loose for us. Because what we got going on right now is the nut is turning, but the line is seized to the nut. All right, I've gone through several heat cycles with a torch trying to get that brake line broke loose with no success. So I broke out my induction heater here and made a purpose fit coil to go over that brake line. It is incredible how fast these things work. Yeah, I think the brake line was glowing there. That was in real time, by the way. I didn't accelerate that footage any. Still not wanting to brake though. Well, I think we're about to the end of my rope here. I think this is going to end up getting twisted off. I can't do this all day. Well, I figured out a cheat code here. Rather than twisting my line off, I took the bolts out of the piston, or the wheel cylinder rather, and now I can just spin it off of the nut, and then I can free up that nut independently. Hopefully thus saving the brake line. I don't know. I don't know that we even needed to touch these things. They seem to be in fine shape. I don't see any leaks coming out of them. All right, now that we got the brake line up here where we can actually get to it, I'm going to give this induction heater another go. I don't think we were getting the heat where we needed it before. I think we were really only heating up the brake line. That's incredible how fast these things work. Have that nut just about glowing now. Look at that, I think we got her wiggling. Oh yeah. We did it. Some may argue that it would have been faster and easier just to replace this brake line, but I don't know. I really, really hate messing with brake lines and crimping brake lines and flaring brake lines and everything to do with brake lines, bleeding brake lines. If brakes are in the name, I usually don't like working on them. If I can avoid it, I do. Sweet, that's all fixed up. All right, we're ready to start reassembly here. I got all my parts from Napa and we're ready to rock and roll here. We'll start with a new wheel cylinder. I've already taken the liberty of cleaning up a lot of these old parts. Basically, we just hit them on the wire wheel. But clean parts are easier to install than rusty parts. Especially stuff like our slack adjuster here. Well, I don't know if you call this a slack adjuster on a vehicle like this. I guess it's a self-adjusting adjuster. I don't know. I guess I would still call it a slack adjuster. All right, I have the new cable, the adjuster cable, installed on our adjuster assembly. I think I can go ahead and install that now. Could be wrong. I'm sure you guys will let me know down in the comments. Sweet. All right. Whew. We can go back to my earlier comment I made about somebody out there that knows how to use these drum brake tools is laughing at me big time. Because I know there's probably some easier way to do just about all this. Anyway, got a new adjuster to go down here. And the way this works, I believe, is every time you back up and hit the brakes, it like kind of ratchets a click out of the adjuster, and it kind of just keeps your slack out of the drums. It basically compensates for the wear in the shoes. Feel like a pro when I know how to use the tool. All right, well that looks right to me. You guys may beg to differ. New park brake cable. Slide that right down there like so. So with that, I believe the brake assembly is completed. We just need to come up here and change out the parking brake cable where it ties into the main park brake cable. Well, I think I forgot to hit record there, but that actually went quite a bit easier than I had imagined. Should be good to go. I'm recording this the day after I released the video of fixing up my interstate trailer, and more on that here in a minute, but somebody made a comment, brake clean actually being used to clean brakes. I've never actually seen that. It made me laugh because, yes, 90% of the time, at least in this shop, brake clean is not being used for brakes. It's being used to clean whatever else needs cleaning. Some people like to really give me a hard time about not putting new parts on a lot of times, like these springs or, you know, cable guides, something like that. I have the new ones actually just laying over here in my box of spare parts that I bought, and I didn't install them, and it's for a reason. I'm a firm believer that the older parts are almost always better. If they're not broken, you're better off to use the older parts, except for things like, you know, brake master cylinders, where the seals might be ready to go out of it. There's really, a brake master cylinder is just a hunk of machined metal. Like, it's kind of hard to screw that up. But things like this park brake cable, I had to replace this. It was no good. But this one is built substantially better than what I got from Napa. Now, I'm sure there's people that would argue, oh, if you went to O'Reilly's or wherever else, AutoZone, they'd have had a better cable for you. Probably not. I mean, most of the aftermarket parts are made by other companies like Dorman or wherever. Most of the parts houses are buying the same parts from manufacturers or suppliers or whatever. This cable has an actual rubber grommet on the end of it, which is angled for the angle that the cable comes out of the back of the brake assembly here. This one does not angled at all. It goes in there kind of squarely, and because it's not angled, it's kind of on a bind a little bit. On top of that, you have this coiled spring here, which acts as the retainer, what latches the park brake onto this little arm down here. Look at that. It's not long enough, versus this one has got plenty of extra in there, and I actually had to really fight to get that thing off the arm because this spring was doing its job. This new one is also substantially smaller, I should note, but also not long enough either. And that, my friends, is why I have trust issues with new parts, because a lot of times the old ones were better. I'm sure somebody's going to say, oh, you could go to the OEM and get the parts too. I doubt. I could be wrong, and I would love to be proven wrong on this, but I doubt Ford is going to sell me a park brake cable for a 71 F250. I just don't think that's in their system anymore. So in keeping with what I was just talking about there, old parts being better than new ones, I went ahead and had our original drums turned because they were not bad, but they were grooved up, so we could do better. The pads and everything are fine. I keep calling them pads. They're shoes. I know people are going to yell at me for that. Not only did I want to keep these because they're probably better quality than I could buy now, but they're also pretty expensive. Not like a modern day where you're just buying a rotor or an actual drum. This is a drum and hub combined, so things get quite a bit more pricey there. So definitely worth turning these down and reusing them. They got plenty of life left for what we're going to be doing. The bearings are just fine. I threw them in the parts washer just to clean them up and verify that there was no funny business going on with the rollers. They look like they're in great shape, so no need to worry about that. I got us a new oil seal because we're definitely not going to reuse those. This is a pain to take apart. We don't want to do it again. That sucker's tight. All right, we just got to pre-lube our seal a little bit, slap that drum and hub back on there. Hopefully the audio isn't going to crap for you guys. It's raining pretty hard out there. It's getting to be a pretty good roar in here from the rain hitting the roof. Oh boy. I've never had that happen. People are always yelling at me to use jack stands. We had jack stands, and I still was able to just rock this thing off the jack stand. That wasn't good. See, I trust the jack more than the jack stands now. It's because we're using these little rinky-dink guys. Should have those big boys I have supporting this thing. All right, well, it's sitting on two jack stands, plus I left a little tension on the jack. So after just sitting here complaining about this new cable, I'm actually looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, that isn't even going to work. Like, what is going to return this arm, the park brake arm? There's a potential for that to not only not return the brakes, but of course come disconnected because it's not not doing what it's supposed to do. So the only solution I could come up with, because I did call the parts store and they don't have any other part numbers. This is the only one that they can get me that fits this truck. This is just the way they make them, which is, again, useless. Cut my old cable, got the spring off of here, and we're gonna have to wind this spring onto the new cable after we remove the old one, of course, which is also going to be a pain. I typically deal with Napa just because they're local, but I've also, you know, not afraid to get on Rock Auto or Summit or whoever and get my parts, but I've already looked at those places and none of them have any good part numbers for this. It's all the same exact part from the same manufacturer that is just sold by different distributors. Getting this spring off of here could prove to be a bit challenging. There we go. Took a while. Finally got the spring started to uncoil here. This spring is a tighter spiral than the old one, so there's a good chance we're probably just going to ruin this one in the process of unspiraling it here. I don't have any need to use this spring for anything else, but what I'm saying is this is a one-way street. Once this thing's off of here, we're not putting it back on, even if the old spring doesn't work for some reason. There we go. Halfway there. Now we got to fight this one back on. It's going to be a good time. All this just because aftermarket manufacturers can't make good parts. Well, that was a gigantic pain in the butt and a waste of time, but at least the park brake cable should work now. Things you shouldn't have to do, but sometimes do when you're working on old junk. In real time here, I'm recording this the day after releasing the video on repairing my trailer with the bad wheel bearing. That video seemed to bring about more hate comments than I think just about any video I've done. So the big thing that had everybody in an uproar in the last video is basically this inner nut on a bearing setup like this is what preloads the bearings. They were mad I didn't take a socket and torque this thing all the way down to like 60 or 100 foot-pounds or something to make sure the bearings were seated, which I guess is a fair argument on a brand new set of bearings, which they were in that scenario. However, I did verify with a bar, I don't think I showed it in the video, I did verify that the races in the hub, since it was a new hub that I didn't install the races in, I took a bar and I tapped on the races and made sure they were all the way shouldered, as well as, just like you saw me do here this time, I don't think I recorded it the last time, put the nut, or put the bearing in and then take a punch and actually tap on the bearing. Now you don't want to go ham and beat the crap out of it because that can flat spot your rollers. But what I'm doing when I do that is seating the bearing all the way. Is that as reliable as running the nut down with a socket? No, I'll give you that, it's not. I'm not saying I'm any ace perfect mechanic here, and it might not be the by the book method on how to do it, but it's the way older people taught me how to do it, and it's worked for a bunch of times, and I've never had an issue. And I've never touched this truck before. I can see they did not have the proper socket to do this either, so I know for sure that they did not tighten this down with said socket and make sure the bearings were seated, and it's been just fine for The good Lord only knows how long. And I personally know the people that this truck came from, and I am very confident in their mechanical abilities. So what I'm going to do now is the best I can. I'm going to take this chisel, I'm going to run that nut down tight as I can with the chisel, back it off a quarter turn, just like I did with the trailer, and then the lock washer jam nut. One thing you have to be careful of when you're doing this is you are going to start peeling the edges of your nut. So you got to make sure you don't lose any shrapnel into your bearing, because that could cause a premature failure as well. I actually got one hanging on there by a thread, so I'm going to pull it off now. Is this the perfect way to do it? No. Is it my preferred way to do it? No. Will it work? Absolutely. All right, so that last chisel mark is at the 12 o'clock. I'm going to bring it down here to 9 o'clock, and I will call that good. All right, see, I feel very confident that that is plenty tight. Take a bar, bend down our locking tab on our washer here. So the last thing I need to do here before I put the axle in, I can check the drag on the brakes right now, and it's not bad, but just a fuzz tighter than I would like. So on the back of the brake plate assembly here is a little slot, and you can fish this special brake adjusting tool in there and get some clicks out of that ratchet. That adjuster ratchet. I don't remember which way you need to go. But we should be able to spin it a few times and get this drum to spin a little more freely. That's just about perfect right there. It'll free spin a little bit and then stop, so it's got just enough drag on it, in my opinion. Remember kids, this is not meant to be an instructional video, more of entertainment. So we put a rubber plug back in that slot on the back of the drum, and she is done. Before we slide our axle all the way in, put a small little bead of silicone around it so that thing seals up and doesn't let any axle oil come slinging out the side. Doesn't take a whole lot. There we go. All right, she's 100% back together. The only thing we have left to do is bleed the brakes so we can get some pressure back over here in our master cylinder. So originally, I wasn't going to touch any of the other brakes. I popped this side off right before I took down the other side to get turned. I got them both turned at the same time, and now since it's apart, well, we might as well go ahead and replace that wheel cylinder. I also ordered the hardware kit since I figured this cable was in the same kind of shape as the other side, but it looks just Jim Dandy to me. So maybe I can finagle that wheel cylinder out of there without disassembling everything. That would be a much easier and more convenient way to go. I will replace the ratcheting mechanism while we're in here because those like to seize up. I paid my stupid tax a little bit on this one. I was talking on the phone to my buddy and working away. I put the new wheel cylinder in, I put the new cable on for the brake adjuster, I put the new adjuster in. I put the hub back on, bolted it all back together, all the way to the point you see now, and started cleaning up my tools. And as I was cleaning up my tools, I saw the two springs that hold the pads together laying there on the ground. Paid my stupid tax. So, of course, we had to tear it all back apart, put it all back together, but we managed to put in all the pieces the second time around at least. So that's done. I set the drag on the brakes. Everything should be good there. Last thing I want to do in today's video is put some shocks on this bad boy, and then I think we're ready to put the bed back on. So let's just throw these shocks on. Not much to putting the shocks on. Well, we finally made some progress on the old F250 here. I was really just dreading working on this thing for whatever reason. The truck is now pretty much ready for the service bed to go back on it. So in the next video, you're definitely gonna see that. We're gonna put the bed back on. We're gonna get the taillights hooked back up to it. Maybe we'll think about doing a little bit of modifications I have in mind to the bed. I'm not sure yet. These two rims that were on the rear of the truck are not original to the truck. I have all 4 original rims. We're gonna put some tires on those, maybe blast and paint the rims before we put tires on them. Get that all done up. Then we're gonna go through and give the engine and the rear end a complete service. Make sure we got it all topped up with some fresh oil and fluids. I believe, I have to check my stash, but I believe I have a 2-barrel carburetor that would bolt right onto this engine, and that should be a pretty good upgrade from the single barrel that's on there now, but it just runs so sweet as it is. I don't know if I want to touch that yet. Let me know down in the comments if you guys think that's something worth doing. I don't have a ton of experience with these old 306s. I know they're bulletproof, but is a 2-barrel really worth the hassle of putting on there versus the single barrel that's on there? I think I've also got a set of plugs and wires I want to throw on this truck, and probably a fuel filter, stuff like that. Once it's all back together though, we can at least get it loaded up and rigged up for service, which I am super excited about. So if you guys like seeing these videos on the old F250 though, do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up button down below the video. It really helps out the channel. Doesn't cost you guys a dime. If you'd like to help support the channel in a little more direct fashion, you can head on over to dieselcreek.com, pick yourself up some sweet swag over there. If you're wanting to get stuff before Christmas, as of the date of this posting, I'm not sure that that's going to be feasible. Heck, you might be watching this after Christmas, I don't know. But even if it's not going to make it in time for Christmas, some Diesel Creek swag makes a great gift for a friend, family, child, whatever. We got a ton of stuff over there at the store. That's dieselcreek.com. Link as always down in the description. But that's all I got for today. So as always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.